Inside of the concentration camps of the Second World War, there were many different execution and torture methods used to inflict suffering and pain onto inmates. Each day thousands of victims were being taken to camps such as Auschwitz, and they were then exterminated inside the gas chambers, or they were taken to firing ranges such as the death wall, where they were shot by a group of executioners or one sole gunman who aimed his pistol at the victim's neck. The concentration camps were slaughter factories, and millions of people succumbed to the treatment of guards such as Irma Grazer, Josef Kramer, and Elisabeth Volkenrath, with commandants such as Rudolf Höss and Amon Gerth, ensuring that discipline was upheld at all times. But one feature of the concentration camps that was found, almost at every site, was vital to ensure that prisoners did not escape or get out. If a prisoner did escape, then sometimes dozens could be executed in public on the gallows for this. This often included those who worked alongside the escapee. It was common at Auschwitz to see groups of prisoners being executed on the gallows for an escape attempt, but the electric fences and the barbed wire fences used inside of the concentration camp systems were one way of ensuring that prisoners did not escape, and sometimes the prisoners were even pushed into this by the guards. Welcome to the Fortress. Today we look at the electric fences of death, and to support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. Still found standing at many of the concentration camps as a reminder of the imprisonment and incarceration are the perimeter barbed wire or electric fences that surround the camps. These were vital for the SS guards to ensure that prisoners stayed in, and they claimed the lives of many prisoners. The conditions of the sites were so terrible and brutal that at times some people just simply walked into the fences to end their lives because they could not live anymore with what was happening to them. One very famous prisoner of the concentration camps, who was held inside of Sachsenhausen, was the son of Joseph Stalin, the Soviet dictator. Yakov Zhugashvili was imprisoned inside of the German camp following his seizure on the battlefield, and his own father turned down a number of prisoner swaps for him that could have saved his life. Stalin saw it as the ultimate shame that his son had been captured, and he would have preferred it if he shot himself on the battlefield rather than to fall into the hands of his enemies. For the Nazis, it was a huge propaganda coup, having the son of Stalin locked up inside of Sachsenhausen. But on the 14th of April 1943, Yakov Zhugashvili died inside of the camp. There were differing accounts of his death, including one that he'd been shot by the Germans, or that he'd been involved in a fight with British officers. It was claimed after the war by British soldiers who were locked up inside of Sachsenhausen with him that Yakov Zhugashvili, following having a fight with a number of prisoners, then ran into the electric fence surrounding the camp, and that he died from electrocution before an SS guard then shot at him. It was claimed that he had been driven to do this, such were the conditions of the camp, that he chose to end his life this way, dying through electrocution. The high voltage fence would have killed him before the bullet probably did also, and it was claimed that this was the case with his autopsy. Inside of Auschwitz, the electric fence for many was a symbol of their suffering, and the fact they would never get out of the camp alive. Regarding the fence at Auschwitz, it was claimed that electrical current for the fence, as indeed for the entire Auschwitz camp, was supplied by a power line from the electrical generating plant at Sersha Verdna. Two separate lines ran from the main substation in Babis to the main camp and to Birkenau, and a range of other destinations including the city of Osisem, the train station, the tannery for example. The transformer station at Babis stepped up the current running to the main camp from 5,000 volts to 30,000 volts. There in turn at another substation, located in the grounds of the former tobacco monopoly building, the voltage was stepped down to 6,000 volts, then to 400 volts, at which point it was connected directly to the camp fence. This was a three-phase current. As a result, when prisoners escaping from the camp attempted to short-circuit it, they managed to cut off the power to only a portion of the fence, and in places that came as quite a surprise to them. So some prisoners did attempt to shift the current of the fence to then plan an escape attempt, but it was a brutal sign of their fate. It was also said of the fencing in Auschwitz that, taking into account as well as the internal fencing between the individual sectors and the separate fencing on the grounds of the crematoria and Sector Canada, the total length of the Birkenau camp fences would be 17,189 metres. Adding the fencing segments planned later brings the total fencing at Birkenau to 18,668 metres. This shows how large Auschwitz was in its scale, but it was also claimed regarding the current that, since transmission of low-tension electric power over long distances involves a considerable loss of energy, the Birkenau camp fence, much larger than that of the Auschwitz I main camp, would also use a significantly higher voltage, 760 volts. It has been disputed that the current for the electrified fence around Auschwitz-Birkenau may have been switched off at certain parts of the day to conserve power, or that it was kept live during roll call in the morning and the evening. But also near to parts of the fencing were guard towers, where prisoners were constantly watched over by armed guards, and if someone made a step out of line towards the fencing, then the SS guards would not hesitate but to take a shot at them. Some SS guards even played sick games themselves, as they would purposely throw the caps of the inmates towards the electrified fence or into it. They knew that if the prisoners went to retrieve their caps, then they would either be shot at by the guards in the watchtowers, or they would be pushed into the electric fence by the other guards, or forced to walk into it. Some guards did this, and they forced inmates into the fences, and there are some harrowing images of people lying dead on the fence. The SS guards at times tended to play sadistic games with the prisoners of the concentration camps, as at Mauthausen they utilised the quarries to execute prisoners, and so would either force them to push a prisoner in front of them off the precipice in cliff face, or this person would then be shot. It was certain execution, and for some of the guards the fences became a gallows where they could condemn prisoners. It could be used as a torture method too, and as a way of mocking prisoners and getting them to confront possible death. One punishment method used in the camps was that the guards forced a prisoner to stand in between the narrow strip of ground between the electric fence and the second fence, and the prisoner knew that if they touched either of the sides, then they would probably be dead. The strip of ground was just 60 to 80 centimetres wide also, and it was terrorising, knowing that one slight misstep and someone would be executed. When some of the camps were liberated, a number of prisoners went on the offensive, and they murdered and reprisal killed a number of their guards and capos who had treated them in such terrible ways. One commandant who was killed during the liberation of the Gusen camps was Franz Zieris, the commandant of Mauthausen. He succumbed to his injuries, but then the former prisoners of Gusen took his dead body. They then hung it from the fence of the camp to act as a message to those about the actions of the man that caused so much suffering. His body was then covered in swastikas and messages such as Heil Hitler, in an ultimate sign of Nazi shame. For many prisoners of Auschwitz and the other concentration camps, the fences did not just act as a reminder of their incarceration and suffering, but they were also used as an execution method. The guards heavily patrolled the perimeters of the camps at all times. They would not hesitate but to shoot a prisoner if they encroached on the fence. Prisoners were also pushed into the fences to their deaths, and some even voluntarily walked into them, such was their suffering. Today many of these perimeters stand around the former sites of terror. They are a powerful reminder of the past, the terrible conditions that people were kept in during World War II. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you for watching.